back into a supplemental DNVR Avalanche at the Rink podcast video. Podcast. It's funny. Whenever I talk to Greg Cronin, I find myself adopting a little bit of a Massachusetts accent. Hey, I don't know what that just was, but
I think you should. You should just... Oh, see, this is why we couldn't get to everything yesterday.
I didn't get to do my Greg Cronin impression.
But we did leave some stuff out yesterday, Megan, that we wanted to make sure we touched on today because it's hard. We don't want the show to go too long,
right?
Because we don't want to lose people, but we just have so much to talk about. So this is a second week in a row we're having to do like an insert, if you will.
And it's about Ryan Merkley again. I'm just kidding. It isn't, but it is relative to the Eagles and their decor. And I didn't know, too, if you wanted to circle back to Logan O'Connor because we grouped that in right at the end. I don't know if you felt satisfied with the conversation that we had.
I feel like we're pretty good on LOC.
Okay, perfect.
At least I'm good, unless you needed something else.
No, I had a lot more. I'm just kidding. No, it was more so the depth contributing. I thought it was really timely that Matt Nieto and Logan O'Connor in the following game, because in the Tampa game, which is kind of relevant tonight, everyone gets left off the score sheet, and there was frustration that the depth wasn't doing enough. And they have a really great response in the next game. You're hoping that this is something that can continue, whether it be from Logan O'Connor, JT Compher, Matt Nieto. It's funny, JT Compher is depth, but he's also been playing in the top six. So.
Right. Yeah. Jared referred to him as, as we do a lot, the Swiss Army knife. I do count a JT Compher goal as depth contribution, though, because he's not Nathan McKinnon or Mikko Rantanen. Val Nichushkin is going tonight, we think. He's not one of those big names. So while you're right, he does play, some time in the top six. I consider him depth.
It'll be an interesting showing for Ben Myers, who has done good things with the Avalanche except for scoring. And he finally got some scoring in the American League level. Can that translate to the NHL? It's going to be a really big opportunity for him to make a case for himself. And if the depth wants to contribute, Ben Myers step up to the plate.
Yeah. You I'm going to stop just short of saying you need him to. But look, we've talked about, we talked about it on the At the Rink pod, which again is live here on our YouTube channel. So make sure you go watch that. Again, I'm going to stop just short of saying you need him to contribute, but this is a guy that the Avs have a long-term plan for. They see him as part of the NHL roster. If you're being honest, I'd be willing to bet that he was probably in their plans coming out of camp. They would have liked to see him stick on the NHL roster and really kind of jump right back in to the extent that we saw him last year in those, whatever it was, 9 games that he got. I thought he was really good, really effective, scored a goal. I think that's maybe what they were hoping to get out of him right out of the gates. Hasn't quite been that. That's okay. Tonight seems like a great time for him to start. Not just tonight, this call-up, this stint right here. You don't know how long it's going to last with the injuries kind of in flux. Now's the time for him to stand up and do that. Or might be a little bit of what we talked about yesterday, that could be someone you are looking at as a potential piece to move here at the deadline.
He's someone who carries himself very well. He doesn't hang his head low. And so I don't know that he would ever say that there was a confidence issue there. Yeah. But it has to help his confidence to find the back of the net at the American League level and get the opportunity in the minutes that he did there as well. He had every opportunity, honestly, everywhere. Top line, top power play. Pretty sure he took shifts with the penalty kill. He was getting to do everything and lean into the parts of his game that are a lot quieter in the National League.
And it's a more natural extension to go from NCAA to AHL, right? That just, in my brain, that feels like a little bit easier of a leap to make for a guy like Ben Myers. You're not talking Jack Eichel or any of these really high, prolific kind of players coming out of college. As good as Ben Myers was, I think it's been good for him to get some AHL reps, because that's one thing that we, I think maybe gets watered down a bit sometimes when we talk about NHL, AHL. American Hockey League still features some very, very good hockey players. For my money, it's the second best league in the world. I think you can put the KHL kind of in there. So taking that step for him, I don't think has been it's never a bad thing. You know what I mean? To develop a guy a little bit slower.
Absolutely. And he is coming right out the gate from college. So the expectation that he plugs into the NHL lineup straight away was, I don't want to say unrealistic, because we saw him get in NHL games at the end of last year that looked good. It was lofty.
Yeah.
It was aspirational.
Yes.
But the path there is still present for Ben Meyers.
Yep.
And that's actually a great transition, though, into the American League conversation, because just catching people up on where the Eagles are at presently, because the caliber of talent at the American League level is something you don't want to undervalue. A lot of future NHL players are in the American League right now. And I thought that the All-Star Game Classic was an interesting nod to the caliber of competition that the Eagles face within their own division. Mm-hmm. The Pacific is who wins the All-Star Game at the American League competition. And I think that's an important nod to a lot of the talent that they face nightly within their division should be on notice within that league is really difficult to play against. And the Eagles, they've remained competitive even in this season. I think they're third in the Pacific Division right now. They've definitely struggled to keep that spot and have moved up and down from that place, but they're playing well above 500 hockey in this Pacific Division, which is extremely competitive.
Yeah. And I do want to make this, because I think it's an important distinction to make, that, and it's not, doesn't necessarily have to do with the move to Colorado, but I think the move making the Colorado Eagles the American League affiliate of the Avalanche, I think it is a significant line of demarcation that lines up with the culture shift and the staff and all of that stuff kind of changing over for the Avs organizationally. The Avs have historically not had good American League affiliates. They've typically not seen a lot of success, at least in quite a while, especially when they were in San Antonio. It just really didn't go well. They move them to Colorado they take over the Eagles franchise. They elevate them to the American Hockey League. You get, new faces in there. You get organizational changes starting, I think, with Jared Bednar really kind of having an effect going down. And this all leads me to my point of, you are now looking at an American League affiliate that is in maybe the best division in all of the AHL. We talked about it at the beginning of the year, Megan. Every time the Avs make a call-up, that affects the American League team. We think about it in terms of like, oh my gosh, the Avs are having to play with, pick a name, Brad Hunt. Well, that means that the Colorado Eagles now don't have Brad Hunt, and they have to have a replacement level guy fill in. So the effects that we see at the NHL level absolutely trickle down to the American League level, and I think it's not nothing that, kind of like the Avs, despite all of the uncertainty with the lineups and the rosters and who's here, who's there, when are we going to have this guy, when aren't we going to have this guy, waivers, all of that stuff, it's not nothing that they have hung tough in a very good Pacific Division.
And also notably, because you look at who's above them in the division, and they are teams that are scoring goals every which way. They have several leading goal scorers in the American League on these teams in the Pacific Division. And the Eagles are not producing quite as much, but they are playing incredible team defense. And I think this
sounds familiar.
Is familiar. Exactly. And like, if you want to know, or it better informs how I talk about the Colorado Avalanche, to pay attention to the Colorado Eagles, to see what kind of identity they try to embrace, the culture, the buy-in. We use these words and they almost become buzzwords, but they're not empty.
Right.
They absolutely hold meaning. And here it holds meaning because they are not finishing a lot of their chances. The game and the identity that they've had to adopt is one that values team defense.
Yep.
This is where Galchenyuk becoming a better defensive forward has become extremely important, because they needed that of him. He wouldn't fit in here if he didn't adapt in that way.
Right. And again, I don't know if you can strictly point to the fact that they are closer and the two organizations can work a little bit more in step, but this is something that going back to what we were talking about just a minute ago, I felt was always missing, was the cohesion between the Avalanche and whomever their AHL affiliate was. And now something that I remember Jared Bednar really putting emphasis on a couple seasons ago was, we want them doing if you see us doing it, we want our American League team doing it, because we don't want there to be any stumbles or any confusion when you're pulling an American League player up to play, in the national. We want them to be as smooth of a transition as possible, so we know we can throw them in and they're going to be good to go. And so I think the way that you just said that, like paying attention to what the Eagles do, really is a precursor for what the Avalanche do.
Absolutely, because those players that get called up have to also fit into the culture of the Avalanche locker room. And I wanted to ask about Andreas Englund today in the media availability, because I feel like I wonder if there's this transition that has happened in Bednar's perception of him. Like, is he becoming less of a call-up guy and more of a long-term depth player that they're going to view as a seventh man down the line?
I think they're keeping that door open, and I think the fact that Brad Hunt was the guy who was waived this week
exactly
tells you everything you need to know.
No, that's exactly what I was thinking, because these are both players that would have to pass through waivers at this point. And I wonder if they have a little bit of fear around Andreas Englund clearing, and if that view has changed a little bit, like he actually might be an Avs player.
Well, and we've talked about this going back a couple of weeks, Megan, that like he is one guy that for me, this is just for me, I'm fine with him as my number 7. I don't feel the need to go spend an asset to bring in that guy. Now, again, and again, this is purely conjecture, spitballing here. If you wanted to go out and get a guy like Jonathan Taves, I don't have a problem with you asking for Jack Johnson to be thrown in on the backside of that for a 7th. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Save us the hassle from having to do a 7th round draft profile,
Right.
And obviously I'm joking, but like, if you want to do that, fine. Now, obviously, potential Eric Johnson injury maybe changes that a bit depending on the severity of it. But assuming health, which until we know otherwise, that's what we'll assume, that Eric Johnson will be back at some point. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I'll save my assets. Andreas Englund has done everything you've asked him to. I think outside of maybe 1 or 2 games, he's been a totally serviceable NHL defenseman. He's big. He moves the puck well. He can play physical. He can fight. He checks all the boxes. That what is he missing for a 6'7"? You know what I mean? Like a potential extra defenseman. What more could you ask for other than what you gotten out of Andreas Englund?
And beyond just that, then there's Brad Hunt just behind him, who has also filled in pretty nicely. And he's someone that we feared wouldn't clear waivers because he's a very trusted, like he is an NHL player on other teams.
Yeah, for sure. I think both those guys are.
And other teams know this. Like Brad Hunt has earned a reputation as someone who can play in the NHL right now. Leagues are very familiar with him because he has traveled a lot in his career. Veteran player, has taken a lot of steps forward, and he was already a pretty trusted player at that point. And the fact that he cleared is huge. It's funny that he gets reassigned and then is already back up with the Avs. The injury situation is grim in that respect, but it doesn't sound permanent. Like Josh Manson's skating in a regular contact jersey. I expect him back any day now, but it still does point to Andreas Englund probably remaining more of a fixture or a mainstay with the Avs group. But I wanted to bring it back to how this relates to the Eagles, because even looking at their defensive identity last year, it was shaped a lot around Jordan Gross, who is an offensive defenseman. I wouldn't say that he wasn't reliable defensively. It just wasn't the greatest strength of his. We saw this when he did play for the Avs in a single game around that really difficult December period, and it was not a good showing for him at the National League level. Even Andreas Englund last year is not the Andreas Englund that I see in him this year. I feel like he even took a lot of steps forward. A lot of it happened in the Calder Cup playoffs last year that I saw both Keaton Middleton and Andreas Englund really reliable defensively. And that's exactly what they profile as, the stay-at-home defenseman type. That's what you want of them. And you don't want, because they kind of had earned a reputation in my eyes, at least, as being just kind of the guys who were always willing to drop the gloves, but didn't have much contribution beyond that. They exceeded that last year. They absolutely exceeded that. I take that back. But it points to something that the Eagles are doing well with their defensemen, because they have Roland McHugh, Jordan Gross, Dennis Gilbert have career years and leave the organization because they actually just played so well. And then before that, like, no matter how much credit you want to give Ryan Graves, Connor Timmins, like they go through Loveland for a period of time and benefit from the experience there. So despite all of the changes that are happening, because we talk about the trickle-down effect, there's lots of call-ups. When the Avs make call-ups, it affects the Eagles decor greatly. But it's been bigger than that. They lose Daniil Zhuravalov to the KHL.
That's a great
they
point.
lose Rob Hamilton to the KHL. Now, within that, there have been several injuries to Josh Jacobs and to Wyatt Ahmet.
Yep.
Keaton Middleton's probably the only guy who's played every single game, which he's become so reliable in that way. But anyways, they are navigating a lot of personnel changes as a result. There's trades that have happened. Ryan Merkley is an acquisition, so he will be a part of this conversation too.
Once he's healthy.
He's out with an upper body injury. Sounds like it's not too serious day-to-day kind of situation, but there was a lot of speculation when he was a late scratch this last Saturday game that it was performance-based because he's had some difficult games since coming to Colorado. It's been a difficult transition. But in talking to people up in Loveland, I think he is being given a lot of allowances and something of a clean slate in their eyes, despite this being a player that came to Colorado with a little bit of a reputation. Everything I've heard pretty unprompted is that he has been receptive to the feedback that he's getting. And if not for him getting hurt so soon into this stint, we'd probably be seeing a little bit more from him, and I would actually have been able to talk to him. I've been talking a lot.
No, you're good.
I promise there's questioning actually coming.
No, I was going to say, this is normally how this goes, but in reverse. So I'm loving this right now.
But it's interesting because I talked to Wyatt Ahmet because he serves a couple purposes. One, the Sean Barron's conversation. Wyatt Ahmet joins this group at the end of his college season last year. He gets in a few games. They're definitely a little rough for him because he has to make that transition from NCAA hockey to the American League pace. That's something that we can predict Sean Barron's is going to have to do in the near future too.
That's someone else's problem.
No, take it back. I mean...
No, I'm totally kidding. I didn't mean to derail you. I'm sorry.
It's so funny how much... He was just named NCHC Defenseman of the Week, you guys, again. He had one of the best weekends that I have seen from him in his collegiate career. That is very dramatic. But he had a terrific weekend. He just continues his... I don't want to say his stock is on the rise because you keep your eyes away off him.
It is.
Keep your eyes off him. But anyways, he's going to have to make that transition, whether it happens here or not. And so I caught up with Wyatt Ahmet to talk about that. The scheduling difference is a big deal.
Huge.
The heavier workload. You know, you learn to love practice when you're in college, but he's definitely getting in a lot more games. But he also is in a position like Ryan Merkley where he's a new face in a pretty established room with guys who've been playing almost a full season together. And so he has to acclimate. And I talked with him a little bit about what it was like to be a new face in the room kind of late in the season like that and what that transition looked like for him.
Hi, Wyatt.
I won't give you that.
How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Wyatt, good to
Megan,
meet you.
nice to meet you. It's not really for a specific piece. I just wanted to catch up with you now that you've had a lot more reps under your belt. How are you adjusting to the pace of the American League compared to college?
It's been good. Definitely helped coming in last year and playing a few games, especially in playoffs. You know, it's kind of the hardest hockey in this league, so I think that helped me. And then just to kind of get my foot in the water again this year and then get back into the swing of things has been good. So just trying to build off each game with the help of all the great guys we got here.
What were some of the toughest aspects in that adjustment?
I would say just everyone's bigger, faster, stronger. You know, in college you might be able to get away with some things, but you can't really out here. It's it's all men, not boys anymore. So that's probably the toughest thing is just winning some of those battles down low and breaking the puck out. But with time that you kind of get adjusted to that and just kind of get used to it and just gotta take a peek before you make a play. So it's been a little bit of a learning curve, but I think it's been going pretty well.
Did the scheduling difference have an impact going from weekend series in college to a bit of a heavier workload here?
Big time. I think I'm still getting used to that. We played half the college season in January alone, so I think that was a little bit of an adjustment. Just kind of trying to take care of your body a little bit differently is a big thing, and then just really focusing on the recovery and the rest side of things when you get that downtime. So I think it's good though. We'd obviously rather play games than Preds anyway, so it's been a little bit of an adjustment, but I like the pro schedule a lot better.
What were some valuable takeaways from Dev Camp and rookie tournament?
I think it's just nice to kind of get comfortable and acclimate with all the staff. That's kind of a big thing is learning the systems and what they expect, and then kind of just getting to know some of these guys before you kind of go to battle and war together. So I think that's always a good thing for us. Get there and play those games at rookie camp before we go into main camp. Just kind of gets our feet wet and we actually play some scrimmage like games instead of just summer pond hockey type stuff.
Can you help me break down who you work on the defensive details with? Like, do you do 5-on-5 with Schneekloth? Like, does he set the pairs? Do you do power or penalty kill with Branham?
I think, they both have their roles. Schneekloth definitely does a lot of work with us as D-men, which is nice. I don't know if I've ever had, that much one-on-one detail video that he provides for us. So he does an awesome job. I think all the other guys in the room would say the same thing. And Timmy handles all the penalty kill stuff, so he's been great with that and working with me on that since I got here last year. So that's kind of been a big thing that I'm trying to contribute to the team is blocking shots and playing those harder, tough minutes in the penalty kill. Like I said, just trying to do whatever I can to help the team in that situation.
Is that something that Cronin works with you guys on as well?
I think he kind of oversees all of it, and obviously he's got great hockey brain and hockey knowledge, and so I think if he wants to throw it in his peace of mind, he will. We'll obviously always listen to that, but Tim and Schneekloth both do an awesome job in their special teams, so I think he kind of lets them handle that and trust them, and like I said, if he wants to throw in his piece of input, he definitely will.
Okay, and thinking back to when you first joined, what were some things you noted about how they want you to play defense here that were different or just important to know?
Yeah, I think a big thing with how they handle things here is just staying in lanes and making sure we're on the right side of the puck the whole time. At Minnesota State, we kind of did things similar. Coach Hastings would always say stay on the small sheet, leave them on the big sheet. So it's kind of similar in that aspect, but a lot of it's just detail oriented. I think our coaches here are very good at that, and make sure that we keep that in mind. And you always got to be taking a look where your guy is. So I think it's always something to learn wherever you go in a new system. But overall, like I said, with the help of older guys between last year and this year, I think all of us have adjusted all right to it.
There has been a lot of changing personnel too, with Sharavalov and Hamilton leaving, some PTOs, some trades. How are you adjusting as a defensive group to some of those changes?
Yeah, like I said, there's been a lot of guys coming in and out, but I think all that matters to us is we talk whether on ice or off ice. Jacobs, Middleton, Vandy, they've all done a great job with that. The younger guys, just making sure we talk, get acclimated with each other when we can before you kind of get into the war zone on the ice. So I think they've been awesome with that. And like I said, Schneekloth does a good job too, just make sure we're all on the same page. So at the end of the day, we're all playing the same game. We're used to it. Just maybe it's a different partner. You gotta feel them out a little bit. But like I said, at the end of the day, we're playing hockey. We've been doing it for all of our lives, so it's not that big of a deal.
And looking at some of these new faces and remembering when you were a new face, what is something helpful that you wish you knew coming in?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the biggest thing is like for me coming into college, you're not really used to coming into a whole new locker room. I was there for 4 years. I was comfortable with the staff, the guys, and you come in a new situation like this, which you kind of feel like you're on an island maybe at first, but you're not the only guy that does it. Like I said, we've had a lot of guys in and out all year. The older guys have been great with kind of helping everyone get used to it. So is the the staff, training staff, equipment guys. They've all been awesome. So overall, I think there's no need to be nervous for people when they come in a new situation. Just kind of be excited. Just take every chance you can to learn from others, and at the end of the day, just treat everyone with respect. And I think they're going to do the same with you.
Who are some of the friendships you've made?
Middleton's a great friend of mine. Vanny Sampo, we were just on vacation together, so that was awesome. Olesen, Bowers, Foodie. I mean, there's a lot of good guys. Like I said, I think that helped last year coming here at the end of the year to spend that time with them and just know I'm coming back into this. So we got a great locker room full of guys, and like I said, I wouldn't just narrow it down to a few. I think we got a great group.
All right, last one. You saw how competitive this team could be in the Calder Cup playoffs last year, and looking ahead at the stretch run and reflecting on this year's group and their ability to adapt to some of those changes we've talked about, how are you feeling about this team?
I mean, I think right now we're just kind of still trying to get used to maybe some of the guys coming in and out, which is nice about this long season. We still got a few months, so we got to worry about that playoffs. For now, we're kind of just taking it day by day and week by week, trying to get used to each other and build that trust in each other. Because like I said, we got a great group of guys here, and we all trust each other. It's just a matter of kind of keeping a group together and overcoming some of that adversity, which we've done all year. So I think that's going to help us going into the playoffs in a few months. But like I said, right now is just kind of focus on trying to get wins as we can to get that home ice advantage.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, so he pointed to communication being the biggest thing that helped him to fit in among this group, and he pointed to older players that have been especially good at bringing guys into the fold, Keaton Middleton being one of them. This is who Ryan Merkley has been paired with. It's absolutely intentional. This is a valuable voice in their leadership group for a reason, and it's going to be an adjustment for Merkley, but he's in an interesting place because I like to hear that he's receptive to feedback, and I'm curious to see what happens when he gets healthy again.
Yeah, no, it's just so funny listening to you. Can you guys tell that Meghan loves prospects? It's just so funny listening to you talk about this Eagles group because there's so much of it, like you said, not necessarily like buzzwords, but there's just so many things that are just such clear parallels to the way that the Avs operate and. Team defense and having to deal with all the injuries and having to be creative and finding different pairings and things like that. In respect to a guy, really any of these guys, but I really do kind of go to a guy like Merkley. I think this is a situation where, as much as people like to drag the Avs for their development and things like that, and maybe you haven't had a ton of success with your own drafted guys, but I think this is now turning into a situation where you are going to churn out some NHLers or fringe guys, or you're going to see big improvements. It's all just so encouraging to hear this. Again, going back to what I talked about earlier in terms of the way that the Avs American League affiliates used to kind of be viewed, and that it was just kind of this dumping ground for whatever. It's not. It's developmental. There's success that's had there. There's a lot of different things that they're doing that I think are preparing them for call-ups, not just to the Avalanche, but, and all jokes aside, but just to be NHL players. And I think that's what you want out of your American League team, is to be churning out NHL talent. And I think the Avs are in a position to do that.
And the staff in Loveland is a big credit to the success that they're having. You talk to someone like Wyatt Emmett, how is this organization getting the most out of their players, specifically out of their defensemen? And you have Cronin at the helm, who's sort of overseeing the operation. He absolutely has input and is making sure that the way that he wants his players to play hockey is being executed. But then on a smaller scale, someone like Aaron Schneekloth is working with players one-on-one, having conversations with them one-on-one, breaking down film with them one-on-one. And he's setting those pairings. He's overseeing those efforts too and working with them very closely. And it all comes together in the end. Like, Cronin's absolutely involved in that. Schneekloth is helping. And then the players. That's, I asked the player, I asked Wyatt Emmett, I asked Cronin, how have you studied the ship? How have you overcome this adversity? And he said, well, a lot of it is the players. They have to be willing to buy into the type of hockey that we want to play. And the group that they have there has agreed to that. And that's the reason they've managed to stay afloat.
And again, this all just sounds very familiar.
It just sounds like we're talking about Colorado Avalanche light. We're going to end it here because I can't even go off on another tangent about the conversation I had with Aaron Schneekloth. It was honestly just like, how do you get the most out of your players? I summarized it, so we don't need to get into it too much.
Yeah, no, it's... I've always known your passion for Eagles, but it just comes out here. The young guys just come out.
You guys, Wyatt Emmett's really nice. I specifically chose him to talk to because I knew that a former captain would be agreeable to talk to following a very bad loss, because the Eagles dropped both games to Texas this last weekend. It wasn't good for them. It was a weird time to catch them and talk about, hey, how are you guys staying afloat, even though you just lost 2 games. So one of them was a close game, though, in the shootout. But that is DNVR Avalanche at the Rink podcast.
AHL edition.
AHL edition. I can't promise you that this won't happen again, because it absolutely will. We'll catch you guys next time.